Welcome to hearing about environmental and ecological engineering.
So Tammy, I'm sorry, this is Larry. You want to display, kind of do the slideshow?
Yes, here we go.
Yeah, in Zoom, you have to hit it twice.
There we go. All right. So as you heard, my name is Tammy. I'm Tammy Thayer, Associate Director of Advising. Also with us this evening is Professor Larry Nyes. You've now heard his voice as well. A unique thing about environmental and ecological engineering, environmental engineering as a discipline is very interdisciplinary. And so all of our faculty have dual appointment. So Professor Nyes not only is appointed in EEE, but he also, his home program is civil engineering. We also have two alumni with us this evening, Yuchan Lim. He is an environmental engineer through the US EPA, Region 5. Brooke Poppy is a water resource engineer, and she is with the Environmental Consulting and Technology Company currently. And then we have two current students, Abby Francis, she's a EEE junior, and so is Michael Harrington. We want tonight's session to be engaging. And so if you have questions as I go through the session, please submit your questions via the chat. Professor Nyes is going to be manning the chat. He might respond to some of the simpler questions even as I'm talking. Any more elaborate questions that you have, he might reserve to the end when we're going to have a Q&A panel. Hopefully that'll be the last 20-30 minutes. And so start your questions if you would. And then I just want to give some brief introduction about, what is environmental and ecological engineering? And we call it EEE for short. If there are some of you out there who had a real strong interest in environmental engineering as you were considering coming to Purdue, if you were looking at other programs and institutions, you probably did not find environmental and ecological very often. That's fairly unique to Purdue. And our faculty really wanted to, as they were developing the curriculum, show that it had a modern evolving side that had more of an ecological perspective to it. So there's only one degree. Environmental and ecological are all integrated, but that's kind of the emphasis of our program, is to really teach our students that perspective to bring to environmental issues. And at this point, I'm actually going to quit sharing. And I'm going to ask Hector, I'm wanting to kind of get a sense of what you all think about EEE. And so we've got some questions, 3 quick questions that he's going to push out to you. And these are not designed to be trick questions. So just go with your gut reaction, your first thought as to what might be a good response. And I only want to give you about 60 seconds. So just read through, go with that first gut reaction that you have. And Hector, I see end polling as an option on my screen. Should I click that?
Sure, yeah, whenever you want to end it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with what feels like 1 minute.
It's been about a minute now.
All right. And if we could share the results.
You're viewable to the attendees right now.
Okay. And so let me see. So here our first question, environmental and ecological engineers do what type of projects? Stormwater drainage planning, air permitting and compliance, sustainable product development, environmental impact assessments, green infrastructure design. If you said all of the above, you were correct. None of the above. We got 0% there, so that is great. Then moving down to question 2. EEE alumni have held the following job titles or positions: Environmental Compliance Rep at Disney Cruise Line, Project Engineer at Hormel Foods, Senior Project Supervisor at Intersolar, Data Scientist at Mathematica, Civil Engineer Corps Officer with the U.S. Navy. Other options was F, only A and C. G was all of the above. And the correct answer was G, all of the above. So we tricked a few of you with that one. And then which of the following is false? EEEs can work at any company that makes things. EEEs mostly work at wastewater treatment plants. EEEs protect human and environmental health. EEE is the smallest engineering program at Purdue. EEEs design sustainable systems and technologies. And we got a real plethora of responses on this one. The last option was F, B, and D, and F was the correct answer. B and D are both false. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the presentation, if I can. Here I'm going to talk a little bit about our EEE curriculum options. So clearly our primary objective is to offer the BS degree program. It's a 4-year plan of study, requires 128 credits, and hopefully our alumni and our current students will talk a little bit during the Q&A about their thoughts, but from the advisor perspective, I feel like it's a very achievable plan of study in 4 years. The majority of our students do graduate in 8 semesters. We also offer a combined degree program, which if you've ever heard of a 4+1, that's essentially what combined degree is here at Purdue, where students can apply and complete the BS and the master's in a streamlined 5-year process. It is a specialized program. You have to have a 3.25 GPA to be eligible to apply, and you do that at the end of your junior year, so that if you are admitted during your senior year, you work with me as the advisor to kind of target key selective choices that are 500 level that will count not only towards your BS, but also the master's. And then you can double count those credits and carry them into the 5th year in the master's program. And so that's the carrot of what makes that a unique special program. We also offer a EEE minor. It requires 17 to 19 credits depending on the course choices that you make, but that's fairly popular across the College of Engineering and even outside programs within science and ag and others. And so that's something that for an audience of this size, not all of you are probably thinking about EEE as your first choice, but if you do have environmental interest, it's a great way to dovetail that into your primary degree program and still learn about what EEE has to offer. And then you'll notice there at the bottom of the slide, there's kind of a pathway, a URL link pathway. We really encourage you, if you are contemplating EEE and maybe other engineering disciplines for your major as a sophomore, we encourage you to look at the plans of study, print them out, do a side-by-side comparison so that you can look at where there are similarities, where there are differences. Look for flexibility points where you would be allowed within electives or selectives to kind of define your interests and be able to develop your own plan of study. So those are just some recommendations. This is our EEE profile. Our program is ABET accredited specifically in environmental engineering. And so here at Purdue in the College of Engineering, we are the only discipline, the only major that offers a degree in environmental engineering, specifically ABET accredited. And if you're not familiar with ABET, that's the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology Programs. We are currently ranked 12th amongst the environmental engineering programs here in the US. This is fairly new news that was just announced a couple weeks ago by the US News and World Report. And so it's actually for next calendar year, 2021. So that is fresh news. Our fall enrollment this year in EEE for undergraduate enrollment is 165. So we have that many sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And then a point of pride that we like to discuss often is that in EEE, we are well over 50% female. So when you're looking at other engineering disciplines, that is not very common. And then here I kind of dive into what do EEEs do? Our program is really designed so that we're teaching our students how to protect human and environmental health, as well as so that they're able to learn how to design sustainable systems and technologies. And then our graduates can then apply those understandings in certain pathways, and these are some of the common career pathways that we see our alumni head towards. The top two bullets are more what we would classify as classic environmental or traditional environmental engineering topics. Have a lot to do with water and watershed stewardship, as well as pollution control and remediation, things of that nature. The bottom two bullets are more the modern evolving side of environmental engineering. Definitely has a lot to do with sustainability. Industrial sustainability has to do with like manufacturing efficiencies, working on a production process to make it more efficient with energy and usage of water, as well as hoping to design the process to have less negative waste stream that's going to impact the environment. And then sustainability of the built environment might be, at a smaller level, such as designing a building so that it's more energy efficient, or at a large scale level where maybe you're working across many types of systems in a growing community, and maybe working on refining mass transit and how that's going to grow with other systems that are, within that growing community, and how to make those sustainable across time. This slide dives into where do EEEs commonly work. And so a slice of the pie there is at the public level. And then it's kind of divided even beyond that. At the federal level, example of that is EPA, which is actually where Yachan, one of our alumni that's on the panel tonight, is currently working. State and local level, local example might be working at an engineering office in the county, perhaps, or at a wastewater treatment plant. And then the bulk of EEEs are working in private sector, about 74–75%. And of that chunk, it's about a 50–50 split between those working in environmental firms, such as consulting firms, and that's where Brooke has spent the bulk of her career, and other types of industry. Basically, any company that makes a widget, makes a product, they need either an environmental engineering sector or a health and safety type of division. And so that's where EEEs would be working. And then these next couple of slides just further expands, specific examples of where EEEs have worked, where they go to learn or serve. And so, as I kind of mentioned, consulting is big for environmental engineering. And so we have a number of examples listed there in that first column. These are hopefully bigger companies, common names, either here within the state of Indiana or within the region. And so hopefully some of these you quickly recognize. In the second column, we've kind of lumped in government and service together. So Indiana Department of Environmental Management, or what we call EYM, is kind of like what the EPA is, but at the Indiana state level. So they're kind of the regulatory board for Indiana. And then like looking down at the bottom of the list, NASA, we actually had a student who did co-op with NASA. And then the Peace Corps is more the service side. If any of you are thinking about going into nonprofit work, we have a number of students who have graduated and applied and gone into the Peace Corps. And so if you kind of have that as a goal, EEE is a good potential option to get you to that position. And then a continuation, this next column labeled industrial and construction. These are companies, you'll notice there's a few like oil companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil, but then very different companies like John Deere. We've had a number of students do internships there, and I believe we have 1 or 2 alumni who are now working at John Deere full-time. And then like the Walt Disney World, we heard that we had an alumni there at the cruise line. She actually did 3 internships as a student, worked in Florida at the main headquarters there for a while, and now she's with the cruise line. And then this last column is graduate programs. You know, hopefully some of you are thinking about going on to higher ed, getting your master's or maybe your PhD. We'd love to have you stay here at Purdue, go into our combined degree program or another Purdue graduate program. But Purdue Engineering is a good launching pad to get to a lot of places. And so these are some examples of where our EEEs have gone to get master's or PhD. These next few slides really dive into some data. And so I'm going to just walk you through this, starting with the quote that's looking at projected growth for environmental engineering as a field between now and about 2024. When this review was done back in 2016, environmental engineering as a field was growing faster than the average for all other occupations. We're still seeing that. And so there's definite opportunities for jobs when you graduate. Then this next bullet, so this is looking specifically at the average starting salary for recent Purdue EEE graduates. This data is from May of 2019. And the starting average salary for that group was $63,500-ish. And then the next bullet is looking at national average data for all working environmental engineers across the US. And so that is a compilation of salaries for the whole group, the whole gamut of, you know, beginning environmental engineers, mid-career folks, those that are getting ready to retire. So this kind of gives you a vision of where you might expect to start with a EEE degree, and then where you would hopefully be within, you know, a few years of getting established into your career. And then I'm going to kind of switch and talk a little bit about ways that you can kind of enrich your experience here at Purdue as an undergraduate student. And so I can't see all your smiling faces, but I know with a group this large that there's probably a number of you that are thinking about getting involved in undergraduate research or hopefully getting involved in a design team so you can have exposure to that type of experience. Hopefully you're all familiar now with EPICS, which is the Engineering Projects and Community Service. I actually don't have on this slide VIP, but some of you might be involved in that. It's very similar to EPICS in the style of the teamwork that you do, but you work more direct with companies. And then there's also GEP, which is the Global Engineering Program here within the college that sponsors global development teams. And so these are like course-based opportunities where you work in teams, and all of those have environmental opportunities. Then I'm going to talk briefly about EEE 498. That is our undergraduate research course number in the program. And for students who connect with a faculty person and want to help them with their research, they can submit a proposal to my office. And once it's reviewed, and if it's approved, I will, help walk you as a student to get registered into that course number, and you actually get to choose the course title based on your research project that will go on your transcript, and those credits can count towards some of your degree requirements. Moving on to SURF. Maybe this is not familiar to you. SURF stands for Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship. That happens each summer. You have to apply and be admitted, but if you are admitted, they connect you with a faculty person that you can work with for assisting them in their research over the summer. You actually get paid, so you get a stipend. And there's also an incorporated mentoring program, so it's a very nice opportunity that if you want to do undergraduate research for the span of the summer, that you can get involved with that and get that great exposure. And then I also wanted to mention EEE 480. So that's our senior capstone requirement within EEE. It's actually a year-long program. So it's a class that you enroll starting your senior fall, and it goes through your senior spring. You are connected with a real company or sponsoring program, working on a real environmental topic, doing design. Generally, our senior design teams are like 3, maybe 4 students on a team. And so you're working with that corporate partner, having conference calls, face-to-face meetings, maybe you're doing Zoom meetings in a semester like this fall. And it's that year-long experience. And I know that Brooke and Yachan can definitely ask or comment on that and answer questions if you've got curious questions about that. Then these next couple of slides, I'm gonna kind of focus on study abroad. And just as a general rule of thumb, within the College of Engineering, we generally want students to go term abroad in their junior year. In EEE, we have 2 pre-planned semester programs where we partner with the University of Canterbury in New Zealand and UNSW in Australia. EEE students have also studied, though, in a variety of other countries, so you're not restricted to just those 2. But oftentimes students come to me and say they want to study abroad, but they don't really care where they go. They just kind of want a simplified process to get there. And so I normally would direct them to Canterbury or UNSW. For those of you that maybe don't want to go a full semester, we also offer in our program what's called a Maymester study abroad experience. It's a departmental sponsored program where one of our faculty, Professor Inez Hua, leads a group every odd May. So barring COVID complications, hopefully she'll be taking a group of about 18 to 25 to Sweden next summer in May of 2021 and focusing on sustainability across sectors. It's a 3-credit course. And it's just a more brief time. Maymester is our first summer session that occurs mostly in the month of May, hence the name. And so you can go for about 12 days, 10 to 12 days to Sweden, crank out 3 credits and have exposure to that global experience. Because EEE is small, I mean, one of our abilities is that we can be very flexible and work individually with each student. And so this is something that, we can try to work with you and make whatever it is that you're wanting to happen, try to make that happen. And I see in this photo, Yachan is in the back row there. So he's one of our alumni. He might be able to talk to you about Sweden if you've got questions. And then this slide, I know it's tiny. This is a poster that Serena McLaren, who's another EEE student, she is a senior this year. She is also part of GEAR, which hopefully you've heard of GEAR. I won't get into too much of that, but basically GEAR is a program that you have to apply to if you're admitted. It incorporates a semester abroad in addition to a domestic internship one summer and either research or a international internship the second summer. And so for Serena, this is kind of the culmination of all of her experiences on a poster. If COVID hadn't happened this fall and we were in a big lecture hall tonight, the idea was this poster would be, you know, up on a big poster board and you could come up and take a look at it. This session is being taped, so for those of you who are real intrigued, you can look at the YouTube of this session later and be able to hopefully read some of it to see what that's about. And then I'm going to end with student organizations. So here at Purdue, we have, I think it's close to 700 student organizations that you can choose to get involved in. There's one that's specifically connected to EEE. It's SEEE, Society of Environmental and Ecological Engineers. It's open to EEE majors, EEE minors, and freshmen who are targeting to come to the program. So if you're thinking about getting involved in a student org, I know this fall is complicated and it's a little different than what we've experienced before. You know, most student groups are not meeting regularly. Many of them are probably using virtual platforms to meet, and that's kind of what SEEE is doing this fall. They are meeting regularly, and I think it's via Zoom, so you can try to get involved. But you know, there are other student organizations that are environmental focused listed here on this slide that aren't necessarily directly connected to EEE, but many EEEs are involved. And so if you're looking to connect with other environmentally focused students, these are some of the student organizations that I would kind of point out to you. And then I am near the end here. So hopefully through tonight's session, and we're going to launch into the Q&A panel shortly. So start putting those questions into the chat. But if you don't end up getting answers to everything, even through this evening's session, I definitely direct you out to our website. Our main office is in Potter 364. I will tell you this fall, we are closed to visitors. I'm only in the office a couple days a week, working virtually the rest. And then if you do have remaining questions, I would direct you to email them to eee@purdue.edu. All the undergraduate questions get funneled to me, so we will definitely be able to help you out long term. And then now I am going to introduce our panelists. So again, I'm Tammy, doing academic advising. Professor Larry Nyes. He's been here at Purdue since the mid-90s, so very familiar with Purdue and with the EEE curriculum. Yachan Lim with the EPA, Brooke Poppy with, she's working as a water resource engineer. Abby and Michael, both EEE juniors. So I'm going to stop sharing and kind of give it over to Professor Nyes. He's been manning the chat, and so do you have any reserved questions?
Well, a question just came in as you said that, and it's to Yi-chan. What do you do for EPA and why? How did you get involved with them?
Yeah, hi. The reason I got involved with EPA and joined EPA is because I wanted to do the most amount of good. And I believe that, you know, change comes in from the inside. So getting in on the ground floor with environmental regulations and the regulatory aspect of the EPA and what the government does, I thought would make the greatest amount of impact for what I wanted to achieve, which is greater sustainability and a healthier environment for us and for the planet. So that's kind of the reason why I got into it. What I currently do in EPA is I work in the Air and Radiation Division. So I primarily work with the Clean Air Act and implementing the Clean Air Act among all of the Region 5 states. So for those of you who don't know, Region 5 is 6 states. It's headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, so that's where I work. And we regulate 6 different states. So that's Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. So I work primarily with Michigan's air program to help them implement the Clean Air Act and answer any technical questions and provide expertise on complex issues related to regulating industry in that state.
Thank you. And then I'm going to direct a question to Brooke. Gosh, this chat now is starting to fly by. What is the ratio of desk work to field work that you would estimate is common for EEE graduates?
Sure. So hi, I'm Brooke. As Tammy and Dr. Nyes mentioned, I work as a water resource engineer for a company called Environmental Consulting and Technology, or ACT as we like to call it. And to kind of dive right into this question, I think it definitely depends on what kind of work you're doing. As a consultant, I do spend a lot of time in my office, at my desk. I'm doing design work using AutoCAD or other programs, but a big part of that is also visiting my project sites and doing some construction oversight as well. So I would say I maybe spend 10 to 15% of my time out in the field, and then the rest of the time I'm in the office doing design work. But I would say that that definitely depends on what kind of consulting you're doing or what kind of company you work for too. I have a lot of friends or coworkers who work specifically in remediation or stream restoration, that kind of thing. And they obviously spend a lot more time in the field doing water samples, things like that. So it definitely depends. But for me specifically, I would say like 10%.
All right, I'm trying to type an answer here and I see that I don't think I can click on answer specific questions. It's been like a day since I've actually worked in the chat room. How quickly you forget. Okay, this is kind of a loaded question, and Abby and Michael, you should be totally honest with this. About this, and what is your favorite EEE class?
I'll be honest, I really liked EEE 355. I'm not just saying it because you're here. But I feel like it's a good for everyone who I doubt knows what it is. It's engineering, environmental sustainability. It's class you kind of get to learn about a lot about food, water, and energy resources, and the sustainability issues that we're all facing today. So I think it's a good culmination of a lot of the stuff EEE is all about.
Yeah, I also really like 355, even though you are not present in the class this semester. No worries, you still get the gist, but I also really like EEE 430, or life cycle assessment, which is basically a class where we look at a product or material from like cradle to grave, so when it comes out of the ground to its end of life. And I think that's a really important way of looking at things that is really special that we get to learn so early on in our career.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to type a response to my first response, but I'm trying to read at the same time. So there's a couple questions I'll answer really quickly. Is organic chemistry a part of the EEE core requirements? No, it is not. It is. You do need to take some chemistry, but we work some organic chemistry into various EEE courses. You can certainly take organic chemistry, but it's not required. And I'm going to throw this out to anybody in the panel. Based on your experience, could EEE students work on biofuels or biodiesel?
You certainly could. Obviously, it depends on what specific thing you wanted to do with biofuels. If you want to work with, fermentation process and creating the ethanol itself, that might not be the best route for EEE. It might be more closely related to chemistry or biological engineering. But obviously, looking at the downstream process and the life cycle analysis of biofuels, and the social aspects of using corn instead of for food, instead of using that resource for food, converting it into energy. That is all within the EEE curriculum, but obviously it really depends on what you want to do with biofuels, but definitely you can go into that sector if you have a EEE degree.
All right. I'm doing a very poor job of keeping up here. Can any of you speak to internships or co-ops that you did while you were students?
I had an internship this past summer at a small environmental engineering firm near where I live, which is in Philadelphia. And I had a really great experience of a mix of desk work and field work. I got to go out and do like groundwater sampling and like subsurface water sampling, which was super cool. And then I did another bit of field work at like a military base, taking inventory of a lot of the chemicals that they have around the base. So that was a super cool experience that I had.
I can answer that too. I had a few internships while I was still at Purdue. None of them with the company I'm currently working with, but the summer after my sophomore year, I worked for in environmental compliance for Motorola. A lot of their products have to meet specific environmental standards, and so I helped a lot with their home division. And then the summer after my junior year, I worked for a non-metallic mining company in their water usage and trying to calculate their water footprint and how they could kind of save resources. I would say I definitely learned a lot from both experiences. I don't do anything related to either one of those internships now. And I think what I'm doing now is definitely a better fit, but I will encourage you just to kind of put yourself out there and try and get any kind of experience, whether it's something you know you're interested in, maybe you don't know much about it, but definitely use it as a learning opportunity. I think that even though I wasn't super interested in compliance, kind of having that opportunity helped me realize what I was interested in. So highly recommend.
I can also speak about the internship experience I had. I had a research and development internship with the Indiana Department of Transportation. I worked in the research lab that's located right outside of West Lafayette. So I worked there for a summer. I was primarily doing performance tests on asphalt samples, different asphalt and concrete samples that they were testing out to see how they perform. And while that might not seem like a very traditional environmental engineering aspect, how well roads perform over time has a very large environmental impact, because the concrete and asphalt industry have huge emissions. So the longer a road can last, the less emissions that we can have, and the higher they perform, the better off the roads are. So that was an internship experience I had. And as Brooke mentioned, it's really important to get experience out in the field for your future career. So even if you're not directly interested in it, just getting the foot in the door is a very important aspect of finding a job after college.
Thank you. So Brooke, there's a question specifically with your name in it. The student asks, what design are you currently working on?
Yeah, so I am working kind of on a bunch of projects simultaneously right now. I would say at any given time, I'm probably working on anywhere from 5 to 10 different projects, which is exciting. I really like that about my job. It keeps me busy. There's always something going on, which is good. But I work mostly with sustainable site development in the water resource department. So a lot of stormwater management and green infrastructure design. So a lot of the clients I work with are private developers, but also a lot of public sectors too, different universities, hospitals, that kind of thing. But the design that I focus on mainly is those BMPs and the stormwater management. So that can be anything from permeable pavement to bioretention areas and rain gardens, green roofs, and that sort of thing. So a lot of really exciting projects that I'm working on right now. And most of them are in the Great Lakes region, so around the Midwest.
All right, so to both you, Brooke, and Yi-Chan, how stressful would you rate your work day?
I would say it depends on the day, and with regulatory frameworks, there are hard deadlines that you must meet. So, you know, some days and some weeks I'll have a very light workload, and some days when we're butting up against a really hard deadline that we need to meet, then we might have a crazy couple of days. But for the most part, one of the benefits of working in government is that it is more relaxed and less hectic than working in industry. So for the most part, it is fairly light, you know, but you know, there can be some crazy days depending on your workload and what you have going on right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with Wee Chan there, that essentially it kind of depends on the day. Working with private developers and as a consultant, a lot of times you'll get phone calls at 4:30 asking you to do something. They say they need it yesterday, that kind of thing too. So a lot of it just kind of depends on your project deadlines, and a lot of times you're trying to get things into permit to meet construction schedules, that kind of thing. But I think for the most part, if you have a good team and a good project management schedule, it's very manageable.
Thank you. I'm trying to type a long answer to a common question that I may speak to if we have time. Oh, I thought there was a new question there. Tammy, maybe that you could address this one. It's kind of like an approximate ratio of students with a focus on sustainability, policy and regulation and remediation. And before I hand it over to you, I just want to mention, and you can expand on this, it's my observation without any data that one of our most popular minors is environmental policy from EEE students.
Yes. So I'll clarify that within EEE, we do not have designated tracks or concentrations that you have to declare. Within our program, we have 18 credits of EEE selectives, which is generally going to be 6 classes that you get to choose. In addition to that, we also have 5 credits of tech electives, so normally 2 more additional classes where you can kind of develop your own plan of study to focus on your specific interest area. And so sometimes students who are very, you know, focused on just learning water chemistry, water treatment initiatives, they might choose to pick courses that correspond with that and do all 8 classes within that zone. Some of our students want to have a very diverse package of courses, and so they might do just, you know, 1 or 2 water courses, an air quality class, maybe more LCA. Abby said that she really liked the introductory life cycle assessment course, and so you could do more in that area. So it really, the curriculum is very flexible, that you can design to kind of gear it towards where you want your career to head over time. I will say that probably about 80% of our students are more on the classic end, where they do have interest primarily in water quality type of work or water distribution initiatives, air quality management, remediation. The remaining 20% are more on the manufacturing efficiencies, industrial sustainability side. And then Professor Nines alluded to the most popular minor for EEE's by far is environmental and public policy. And that's a very nice minor that dovetails with the technical knowledge that you're learning through the EEE classes to get more of a social and economical, you know, policy-based understanding of what drives, you know, us here in the US to make certain decisions that impact the environment, and, you know, maybe try to come up with ways where we can try to redirect that to be more responsible in the future.
All right, so Echan, there's a question about what steps does a student need to take to get involved in government programs?
So there's a lot of opportunities for you to get involved in regulatory things around the country. So specifically in Indiana, the state of Indiana always updates their environmental rules. So every time they do that, it needs to go through the public comment process, which means you'll have a chance to look through it and review it, and if you have any questions or comments, you can submit them to EYM for to get some answers and get involved in the process. There's also a lot of great opportunities within Purdue as well. Lindsay Payne's stormwater management class is a great opportunity to get some hands-on experience and learn how to go from design of a project to actually implementing a project in a real-life scenario. And through that process, you apply for government grants, you get some money through the government. That's a great experience if you're ever planning on going into the nonprofit realm, because writing grants is a large portion of that process. And then obviously you can do internships through EPA, but also through EYM and other smaller, more local governments. And also there's a lot of ways to get involved in government.
So we have a question about, do EEE graduates ever work with renewable energy? And I'm going to say, I want to be clear that in the degree program, if you're interested in learning about the technology, like how photovoltaic cells work, or how solar panels are, that's solar panels, or how wind turbines work, or how hydroelectric power works, you know, you're better off going into mechanical or electrical or chemical or civil, where they have where you're more likely to encounter the direct technology. EEE students work more in the systems, so like deployment of energy systems that use wind and solar, and integration of those systems into the community or into other things. One of our alums, or you know, one of our supporters who is an environmental engineer, is the director of all things energy for one of the largest automotive firms in the world. So, you know, a EEE student can go anywhere. And then I want to just throw this out to any of our panelists, including Tammy. Are we aware of any of our alums that have gone into politics? I know that we have a student about to graduate who is certainly thinking about that. We could talk about that student. Do you want to talk about that student, Tammy?
Yes, so we have a current senior. Her name is Leela, which you'll have to remind me, Professor Nyes, of details of the program. But she had the opportunity a year ago fall to be placed with a House representative and kind of be her intern. And she really had a great opportunity to where she was connected with a House representative who really embraced wanting to learn more about the environmental impacts that are taking place. And so she really tasked Leela with taking full ownership of coming up with some initiatives, writing, you know, some generic policies and whatnot, and really kind of leading the team in kind of knowing how to address and where to get additional information. And I know that Leela really does have the long-term desire that hopefully she would eventually get into politics. So I think I'll see her name out there in the future someday.
Yeah, and the program, I just want to mention, it was called Running Start.
Thank you.
It's specifically for women. And since we have 50%, more than 50% women, you know, more than half of our students are eligible for this. It's a very prestigious internship to get. It's very competitive, and basically it trains young women in the process of how to get elected, how to put together a campaign, how to work in a campaign. It starts to give you exposure to that. So anyway, Abby and Michael, what led you to choosing EEE?
Okay, I guess I'll go since you're still muted.
Sorry.
So I was going farther back. I ended up at Purdue because my mom was like, you should look at Purdue. And I was like, okay. I ended up in engineering because my mom was like, oh, you're good at science and math. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I got here and I was like, engineering, did I make the right choice? But then environmental engineering really appealed to me. It felt like, of all the engineering majors, it felt like I could do something really positive with it. I also felt like just like the program itself is like very intimate. So like I know right now, like I know like everyone in my classes. Yeah, pretty much that just kind of happened.
Yeah, I would say when I was in FYE, I also chose engineering because I was like pretty good at science and math, and Purdue's a great engineering school. And when I was in FYE, kind of considering all the different options, I really was into like technical options. Like I was considering material science because I think that's really cool, and I was considering chemie. But every time that I was like thinking about projects that I would like to work on in the future as a professional, it always had to do in some degree with the environment, and like working on the environment, bettering that and our relationship with it. And I went to a EEE engineering major, and I was convinced that I could do great things with this major. Yeah.
So I want to answer one question and then turn it into a two-part question. It's about GPA. So all you need to do to be eligible to enter EEE is complete the FYE requirements. Is that correct, Tammy?
Yes, yes it is.
Okay. Then to be eligible for the combined degree program, which is the bachelor's and master's, the minimum GPA is 3.25. And I want to emphasize that the degree programs that are eligible for that combined degree program are more than just EEE. So civil engineering, ag engineering, biological engineering, chemical engineering, industrial management in Cranert, and the NRES program in the College of Agriculture. All those students are eligible for a combined degree program.
Just want to let everyone know I'm going to put up the QR code. Please continue to ask your questions and also fill out the survey.
And while I was talking, like 7 questions came in.
Well, and I'm responding to some of the questions, so they might be comments from me, and just so everybody out there in the audience hopefully has seen my name on some of those.
Oh, some of the questions are about getting the QR code.
Oh.
So here we go. There it is. I'm trying to see if I missed any other questions in the chat. I think we've done a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
And if the answers that you received you think were incomplete or we did miss something, please do send an email to EEE@purdue.edu.
I see that there's a question specific to the Running Start program that Leela did. I have a horrible memory. I would just have you Google it, but I do know that I had recommended Leela to go to some leadership programs here on campus, and she went to one of those weekend seminars, and that's where she heard about it. And so networking, using enrichment opportunities here on campus, doing things like that are really going to open up doors that, you know, you know, I think students minimize those opportunities or miss out sometimes. So just heads up, always be using, you know, your critical thinking and when you're deciding what you really want to participate in and what you don't.
And there's a question about what's the main science that EEE students work with. And I think I'm going to put that to our panelists, Yi-Chan and Brooke, as veterans to answer that.
I think
Yeah,
for my job, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
you can go first.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, the thing that I loved about the EEE program is that you really kind of get a mix of all different kinds of sciences too. So like if you were doing traditional civil engineering, you might not get as much biology or ecology or chemistry as you would if you were doing strictly the civil environmental route. Or we also had to take a physics class and some other things too. And I really loved that it was just a general kind of mix of all the different kinds of engineering. I would say on a daily basis, the things that I probably use in terms of sciences are probably water quality and chemistry and that kind of thing. But again, it just really kind of depends on what kind of field you go into.
Yeah, I think for me, the primary science that I use is probably physics. Physics to understand how a source operates, how they run, and also how control equipment works. So a lot of it is very based on physics, based off gravity. Some of it is chemistry, but I would say primarily I focus mostly on physics.
And Tammy, there's a question about how to find out about study abroad. And there's a study abroad office that if they if they search study abroad from the Purdue homepage, they should, oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's specific to EEE. I just put in the chat for everybody a URL. If Michael could talk a little bit, if Michael's still with us, he went to UNSW last spring. Because of COVID, his experience was a little shortened, but he might talk about just his experience and getting involved there. You have to have, you know, GPA, you want at least, for EEE, ideally you're sitting at like a 2.8, really more towards a 3.0. For the programs, each institution kind of sets their own minimum, and UNSW and Canterbury are 3.0. There's always an application deadline depending on the semester that you want to go. And so if you go out to the website that I just put out there, you'll find some info on that.
Yeah, so the application process is pretty straightforward. You just do it through the study abroad office. You have to, I would just say, like, once you know you want to go, you just start early, because it's, you apply like early the semester before. So like I applied in like September and October, and then I was in Australia in January. But it was a really cool experience. You get to meet a ton of people, you know, experience learning in a different country and be, you know, very independent. So I would wander the streets of Sydney by myself. I actually, 2 other EEE students visited me. They were going to Canterbury in New Zealand. So we got to hang out for a couple of days while they were in Sydney. But I'd say definitely do it. I feel like a lot of people regret not doing it, from what I've heard. So when else in your life are you going to be able to go somewhere else across the world for like 4 or 5 months? But yeah.
So I put the link to the Running Start program in the chat if the person who asked the question is still here. And I think we are up to speed on the questions. I mean, I think we've covered them all, and if I haven't, somebody should speak up and let me know.
I'm still scanning, but yeah, I think we're in pretty good shape. There was a question, and maybe I missed it. A couple questions about for the current students, like what led you to choose Triple E? Did you come to Purdue knowing you wanted Triple E, or if you decided it later in your freshman year, and what led to that decision?
Yeah, I had no idea what Triple E was until I got here. So, and then I believe Abby said she liked it already, right?
Yeah, I didn't come here knowing that I wanted to go into the Triple E program. I didn't know that it was a thing, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay, now Yachan and Brooke, I think Brooke, you came here specifically for Triple E, true?
Yes, that's true. So I had kind of the opposite story where I didn't know I wanted to be an engineer, but I knew I wanted to do something environmental. And I was kind of looking for different career paths and realized that engineering would give me the best skills to do some design work and make the most impact. And so when I was looking at engineering programs, I was looking specifically for something that was environmentally focused, not just an environmental branch of civil or water chemistry or something like that. And actually, I think when I was looking, Purdue was one of the only schools that offered a Triple E program. So I came directly for that program and was glad that I did.
Yeah, I definitely did not come to Purdue for when I first got to Purdue in first year engineering, I wanted to design renewable cars. I wanted to get into industrial design. So I started off in mechanical engineering, then I switched over to chemical engineering, and then I ended up in Triple E. So I actually codoed over after a year in chemical engineering. So definitely not a straight path to Triple E, but as Tammy has said, the program is very flexible, and I was still able to graduate on time and kind of figure out my path through the program. So there's a lot of built-in flexibility and ability to let your passions guide where you want to take the program.
And I just want to mention that the link I posted to Running Start was wrong. And some of you who are quite observant and on top of things have fixed it in the chat room. So thank you so much for that. It was just a careless copy and paste. I didn't actually look at the website that popped up, which that's pretty risky. And maybe I'll learn from that, I'm sure. But thank you very much for catching that.
Yachan, why did you drop out of mechanical and chemical?
Well, mechanical, I dropped out because of their first semester of fall, your sophomore year, is the worst semester you could possibly imagine. You're taking statics and advanced physics and advanced math, and on top of all of these other classes that you part of your engineering core. So I just decided this is not what I want to do. This is not what I envision myself doing. So then I switched over to chemical engineering. And then I guess I really didn't know, like as I initially said, I wanted to design cars. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But taking courses and figuring things out, I just realized that's not what I was passionate about. These courses weren't interesting to me or engaging to me. So I talked with a few friends that were in the Triple E program and talked to Tammy about different program paths for Triple E and what typical graduates do, and figured out I was more closely aligned with what I was interested in. So I made the switch my first semester of junior year. I also want to mention those two programs are the two largest programs at Purdue. And among them, in Chemi, they had 2 advisors, and in ME, they had 2 advisors as well. So you get a lot more one-on-one attention with Tammy and in this program, and you have a lot more flexibility built in. And it's a much better experience than I had with the other 2 programs because they're so large, and it's really hard to get personalized attention from the advisors and the faculty.
Now, in their defense, engineering is growing, and so ME, they have like 8 or 9 advisors now, or close to that. Chemi, I think, has 3, 4, maybe. So, yeah, we're all bursting at the seams. So I think we're up to speed on the chat. We still have 45 participants, it looks like, which 6 or 7 of them are us. Any other final questions out there? And if not, we will take off.
Yeah, just a quick shout out. If any of you guys are interested in government work or EPA or, you know, internship opportunities here. I also did the master's program at Purdue as well. So if you guys have any questions about graduate programs, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Good luck to all you first year engineers with this semester. I hope you guys have fun with FYE, and I wish you guys luck choosing next semester.
Well, thanks to the panelists. I really appreciate you guys. That was smooth. I'm very happy with how things went. So kudos to everybody.